Welcome to another episode of an intimate conversation with women of color. I am your host, Deneen L. Garrett, and this week's guest is Ámaly Homer, Afro-Latina, mama, wifey, friend, hija, daughter, healthcare exchange leader, artist, teacher, lover, friend, student of life on a curly hair journey, and podcast host. Ámaly, tell us more about you.
So I actually recently have a role change. So I'm no longer a healthcare exchange leader. I am now the inclusion, diversity, and belonging leader for a company by the name of Marsh McLennan. And our company is made up of 4 different operating companies, but the main remit of the organization is to deliver solutions to big clients, big corporations around risk, strategy, and people. And I've been given this opportunity to actually lead that entire organization of 77,000 people across the globe on driving our inclusion, diversity, and belonging strategies. So it is a new arena for me somewhat, and we can talk about this later in the discussion, but it's certainly an area that is passionate. It's part of my DNA. I'm a strong proponent and advocate for all things race and ethnicity and diversity. And I've been in that field helping to promote initiatives in that space for at least the past 20 years, if not my entire life, as an Afro-Latina. So that's my new gig, but all of the other things still apply. And, I'm excited to be here. I think the conversation today is really important. And particularly, in setting, some really good grounding for change and impact for women of color, Afro-Latinas, all, individuals that are representative of this beautiful demographic of ours. So I'm excited about that.
Thank you so much for being here. And as a matter of fact, I believe that the way that we were connected is I saw you speaking on a webinar. I think it may have been around Native American. And so I immediately reached out. So thank you so much for connecting with me and staying connected and saying yes to our conversation today, because we're going to talk about the typical things that I talk about on the show, but we're going to dig a little deep into the topic, around hair. And so I'm dressed appropriately, right? I rock dope hair and then my shirt that I have on. So, and shout out to artist Faith with an E for this shirt. And I'll get into where the shirt kind of came about a little bit later. So I want to just stop for a moment and thank everyone for your commitment to the show, for coming back each week, whether you're listening on your favorite podcast platform or watching on YouTube. I greatly appreciate you and continue to do so. Subscribe if you haven't done so, and make sure you share, because my goal is to elevate the voices of millions of women of color. And in order to do so, I have to reach them. And so that's where your help comes in. So thank you so much. So Ámaly, share a little bit about your Afro-Latina-ness and why why it's important for Afro-Latinas to have a platform to use their voice.
Absolutely. I think, well, first of all, you're helping in that perspective, just given you're setting up this platform for me and for so many other women of color. And I think that in and of itself is phenomenal. As we were talking during our prior discussions, that, I think what I have found in not only in owning my Afro-Latina-ness, but in sharing of my Afro-Latina experience, that the community out there that supports that experience is vast, and they're all driving a really important conversation. And so it's been refreshing for me to kind of be a part of that. But thank you, because without you setting up this platform, certainly my opportunity here with you would not be possible. I would say that my Afro-Latina-ness really became relevant, I would say, and important to me a few years ago. We're just talking about hair when I started to embrace my curly hair. To me, when I say that, I feel really bad because I feel like it sounds kind of superficial. But really, that was a point in time where I thought, when I did it and people were making these comments that were not positive, about my hair, things like you look crazy or, something wrong. I thought, when I didn't immediately switch back to wearing it straight and I just said, I'm going to go full on this journey. I think that was where it sort of clicked for me that, I'm going to own this and I'm going to take this as an opportunity to really start to teach people about me, my background, where I come from, why my hair looks like this, why I can switch from straight to curly and have, all different kinds of hairstyles and still be the same person, by the way, versus letting them assume, who I was. And so that was really important for me. And then I would say, when I think about identity and being Afro-Latina, that concept fully came to the forefront for me with all of the social unrest that ensued post George Floyd. I know it sort of lit a fire under everybody, while we were all living through experiences like that historically through our own personal experiences, or even seeing relatives or friends or others going through that. I think that was the moment where we, at least for me, I thought, I need to use my voice. I need to really continue to use my voice and express, my experiences in helping to fight and advocate for systemic, racial inequities that exist in the world today. So that was kind of like my big aha moment or epiphany or what have you. I know many came to that realization. But as I noted, we all live through this experience on our, in our everyday lives. I mean, so I would say that identity, the true kind of idea or this concept of identity started for me when I first traveled to this country at the age of 9 without any immediate family. I came from Dominican Republic. And my mom, everybody, my immediate family stayed behind. I traveled with a family friend. And I remember when she asked me, do you want to go? I was like, yeah, I didn't look back. I was like, absolutely. Why? Because, the way we talked about the United States was greater opportunity,
Right.
Greater access to education, like all these amazing things that I kept hearing people talk about, grown-ups talk about. And it didn't matter that I didn't know the language or the culture or any of that. I just knew something great was there. And so, and there was snow. That was the other thing. I was like, I can't wait to see snow. And so I was like, yeah, I'm getting on that plane. And I didn't look back. And I would say that was the moment where people kept asking me, my name is different. I look a little different. I act different. People kept asking me de donde eres? Where do you come from?
Yeah.
And so I remember, like, now that I look back, I don't think it was conscious, but I went through this journey of like, how would I describe myself? First, I was Dominican. It was like a very nationalistic kind of point of view. I'm Dominican and Puerto Rican. That's what I am. I was born in Puerto Rico. On my father's side, my family's Puerto Rican. On my mother's side, they're Dominican. And so that's how I associated my identity. And then I learned about this word Hispanic, and I was like, okay, I'm checking off forms. I guess that's what I am, and then I learned in college, I had friends that were like, you're Black Dominican, right? Like kind of like, wake me up, you do realize that, right? And I was like, okay, I guess, because this is like a really strange concept. Even in Dominican Republic, there's this weird like anti-Blackness thing that is there. And so again, you don't know it, you just feel it, you grow up with it, and when it doesn't become a realization until you come into this country, because you really are asked to choose, right? Pick a side. Yes. And so then I think eventually I came across Latina, and I liked it because it felt very unifying, Latino, Latina. I felt very like, okay, I'm part of a diaspora, I'm part of like this broader ilk. And then Afro-Latina came to the surface, and I said, people are asking me, like, they're like going, you're Latina? Really? How, like they didn't really kind of understand. They couldn't marry the two the way I looked, and Latina didn't seem to fit or it makes sense. And so I was like, okay, I'm Afro-Latina. Like, I'm putting that in the vernacular. I want more people to say this word and come to terms with it. And so, in the work environment, over the past 20 years, that's kind of been, the Latina, Afro-Latina, that's been how I've shown up unapologetically. And it really is, to me, what represents for this broader, Latino diaspora. Latinx obviously has now come to the forefront as well, which is a little bit more gender neutral. And I like the term, but I think, Latino community is still struggling a little bit with the pronunciation of it. And it's just different, right?
Latinx, yeah.
Right? Latinx, how do you say it? But I think the whole point is that, the way that I see it, Latinos are not homogenous. You said this earlier, we look like many different people, Latinos, you have white, blonde hair, blue-eyed Latinos, and you have dark skin. My mother's a very, very dark skin, beautiful woman, with very thick hair, and, she looks like she does, and gray eyes. So her eyes are gray. And so, you have this kind of, beautiful, what I call a wonderful hybrid of individuals that make up the Latino, and really that gives us a superpower, to represent in a bigger way and to be unifiers. That's kind of how I see my Afro-Latina-ness. That was your question, right? So you can tell I'm passionate about this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because what you described is a journey, right? Starting off like, okay, I'm Dominican and then Puerto Rican, and, and then learning all these different layers of yourself to demonstrate, like you said, it's not a monolith, right? It's not, you can't put us in a box. There's not one box for us to fit in. And as I was sharing with you, I was watching Naomi Osaka, and we know that she's her mother's Japanese, her father's Jamaican, right? And so she, in one of the episodes of her show, she's mentioning that there is not just one Black, right? Or that Black is not just African American, right? And we know that, we just talked about that, right? It's Dominicans, it's Hispanic Latinos, it's
Brazilians,
and I mean, we're all over.
Well, I think people don't realize that in the sort of the African slave trade, movement, that Africans actually landed in Brazil. Like that was the first area where trade began, in Lagos, Brazil. And so, and that was in the 1400s. Okay, so like even before they came to what we know as United States today, we were being brought to all these different places. And today, this a fast fact is there are 130 million people of African descent living in Latin America and the US. There are 6 million in the US. Okay, like we are truly global. And so this is not just a US thing. That's the other piece that I always find very interesting. I think people always think about, African ancestry or African culture or African American culture, and that's how we define Black. And I think it's really important for us to kind of say, no, just like, Naomi Osaka did, we are everywhere. And we are it is truly a full diaspora of people that are very rich in culture, deep, that's deeply rooted in so many ways, right? When you think about music and dance and all these things that bring our culture to life, and how different that is across, all those different, areas of the world, Brazil and Dominican, you have all these different styles of music and dance. It just makes us such a rich culture. How can you not be proud to talk about that, right? And to own, the authenticity of that, how can you not be excited about that?
And I think that the reason why we, of course, because of what's taught and what's not taught,
right,
more appropriately, but it's also because in the US, that's where they put you in boxes. You're not necessarily put in boxes in other places, right? When you were coming from the Dominican, you were Dominican. Right. Again, we just talked about people in Brazil. They're Black, they're still Brazilian. But in the United States, as you mentioned, you got to check, like, which box are you?
Yep.
And that's literally putting us in boxes. Yes. Right. And so I think that that's where it comes from. And so what you're doing, the conversations that you're having, conversation we're having now is raising an awareness and, in educating folks, because I'll tell you, it was a few years ago, I was watching, I think it was like Black in Latin America. It was on Netflix, Henry Louis Gates.
Yep.
And he opened my eyes to what you said as far as, Brazil being the more Africans were brought to Brazil than anywhere else, right? That was like the first stop. And that's where majority were left off. But also another thing that I did not know that the Dominican and Haiti were the same island. No clue, none.
I know. There's a lot. It's a shame, right? Because I feel like, to that point, when I remember growing up in the States that I hated history, I hated it. And it's not until now that I can look back retrospectively and understand why.
Yeah.
It's because they weren't talking about anything that was relevant to me. It really wasn't. And I mean, I think I almost shamefully say that I hated history because I know people, my husband is one of them, that are like major history buffs, and history is important in terms of identity, right? And in terms of knowing who you are and your place in life. And it's just good to know history, right? Because it also knows kind of your vision going forward. But none of it spoke about, or there was just a small percentage, right, that covered the African experience and the African descent and the African cultural experience. And so, that to me, I almost like without knowing, viscerally, I probably created this kind of block because it wasn't really teaching me about my Latino roots. It wasn't really teaching me about being Black in America. It wasn't really teaching me about things that I should probably be proud of, in terms of our culture and what makes us who we are and what we should be celebrating outside of Martin Luther King and Malcolm, like, how do we get beyond that? There's so much more to our people. I'm still learning. I tout myself as a student of life because I'm still learning about, Afro-Latinos that I'm like, wow, I didn't even know this person, with one Afro-Latino, and two, that they had such a major achievement, in our culture. And so just continuing to just absorb and educate and hope that we can be, in our advocacy, we can change it for the future generations in terms of what they're being exposed to. This is critical race theory, right? That they're getting that exposure to that education and that background, so that they can, hold that pride in a different way and talk about it and own it in a different way. So I hope it changes. I definitely think that's, one of those things that you're right. It is the reason why we struggle, with owning the beauty, that makes our culture and our people special.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you mentioned history, and I wasn't one that was really interested in either, even though I took an advanced placement history class, but we were talking about John Quincy Adams. So to your point, it wasn't relevant. Like, who cares?
Right.
Right. Like, who cares?
Right.
And as far as I can't say, like, I don't remember any moments in school where we did really talk about, Black history other than, February,
right.
Dr. King. I don't even know that we talked about Malcolm X. I really was exposed to, learning about slavery when Roots came
right.
about.
Oh, wow. Yes.
Right?
Many of us, right? That was our education.
Right. So that, there was that. But I think that right now, you mentioned critical race theory, and there's so much contention around that. There's so many people who don't want it to be taught. And so at some point, I'm sure it'll get through. Yes. But what it does is it raises that awareness that, we can't wait for it to happen. You have to start learning and educating yourself now. And that's what more and more people are doing. And that kind of takes me into, I think it was on July 10 that we celebrated the Crown Act. And the Crown Act was created in 2019 by Dove and the Crown Coalition in partnership with then State Senator Holly J. Mitchell of California to ensure protection against discrimination based on race-based hairstyles, braids, curls, extending statutory protection to hair texture and protective styles such as braids, locks, twists, and knots in the workplace and public. And prior to that, I didn't realize that we needed that protection. Now, now, mind you, I did put a lot of thought. So when I was traveling for work, I put a lot of thought in, oh, how am I going to wear my hair? Am I going to wear it straight? Am I going to wear braids? What am I going to do? And I put more thought into it than I typically would. Because as a woman of color, as a Black woman, I change my hair often, right? Probably weekly, I will have a different style. But when it came to traveling in the workplace, that's where the angst came about for me. And I do want to shout out again. So my shirt.
I love the shirt.
Oh, last week on LinkedIn, when someone had posted about the Crown Act, they also had, it was actually a picture that's on my shirt. And so it's by Artist Faith with an E. So I looked her up and I purchased the shirt. And again, when I knew that we were going to have this conversation, I'm like, oh, so appropriate.
So appropriate.
Have to wear the shirt and everything just to recognize. So
I'm purchasing one as well.
Yes.
I love it. I love it.
And so I do follow her on Instagram. So I know you and I are on Instagram together, but check her out because she has.
I will. Absolutely.
Well. Yeah. But so, what were your thoughts when you first heard about the Crown Act? Have you found your curly hair community? And how are you using your voice for Afro-Latina? So a little bit more, specifically how you're using your voice.
Sure. Look, I would say, I mentioned my hair, earlier in terms of that being kind of like an aha moment for me. First of all, the fact that we have the Crown Act is amazing. And like you, I didn't realize that we needed it, but
right?
I would say I understand. I have been in many instances at work, where they have been horrible situations, tied and connected to my hair. And so had that been in place then, I probably wouldn't have encountered those situations, or felt more empowered to speak up about it. So versus deciding to wear my hair straight for 16 years of the entire time that I was in this space. I've been working with this company for 20 years. 16 of those years, I said, never again will I wear my hair straight to curly to work. To make that decision, it's like you're not really showing up authentically every day,
Right.
And so that so I think in light of that, I'm glad that we have that regulation, and that again it empowers women of color to show up authentically. But in terms of like the funniest thing happened with me as I started to go curly, or at least fully embrace my curly hair. I was actually proud when I 4 years ago decided I'm going to keep it curly. And when I reached that point, of no straight hair, return, I decided, shout out to Expose, a Latina girl group back in the 80s. I'm totally dating myself, point of no return. But, I would say, just to keep the Latino culture alive here, I would say that, that was the moment where when I decided to be curly, that I felt kind of really proud of it. And I felt like it uncovered this like freedom, just to be who I am. And I felt really like I feel sexy and I feel like just liberated, when I wear my hair curly. I still struggle, don't mind me, in getting on a call for work and making sure it's tame, my hair is usually like, when it's like, this is still wet, by the way, when it's like fully dry and I've been out, it comes out to here. So, and that's when I feel the most, amazing. But, for work, I'm still trying to like maintain this like very conservative, fit in this very conservative box, because I know the wheels start turning. And so, when I did that break, that I was like, I'm going curly, I started posting because I was excited. I was like, oh, when I had a good hair day, I was like, oh, I'm going to post on it. And one of my followers responded. I actually started following, back to the curly hair community. I actually started following Curly Penny, Penny
Mhm.
Tovar. So if you guys don't know who she is, please follow her. She's amazing. That was my first video that I encountered on how to do my hair when
Okay.
I transitioned from straight to curly, and she did a great job, and it looked exactly just like hers at that time. And then Lisette, aka Lucetti. So those were my two kind of go-tos, and that's how I found like what products to use and how to, what tools to use and things like that. But when I had a good hair day, it was posting, and one of my followers was like, you should most people were like, looks good, proud of you, type of thing. I always liked your curly hair, I was like getting like some good vibes. And this one person is like, you should just have your own curly hair handle.
Okay.
And I didn't know how to take it. I was a little offended by it because I thought maybe she's trying to tell me not to post about my hair anymore. Like, and maybe nobody
Oh.
else cares about my hair as much as I do. But it, I was like, I'll take you up on that. Sure, I'll bite. And so I created Ondas Latina. And ondas means waves in Spanish.
Okay.
And so I've always associated ondas with, hair, with, the black hair experience. And, like if you think about men and their waves, black men and their waves, and so I always like kind of made that connection. And so I started the Ondas Latina handle, and that's where I started to kind of plug, everything, my entire journey, the products, the changes, the struggles, good days, bad days. And then I was like, wait, it's not just about my hair, it's about being Afro-Latina. And so I would talk about that and just bringing attention around that. And then that's when I started to see all these other influencers pop up. And particularly in the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, a lot of the influencers are from those parts of the world. And what I noticed, and that's really important because the culture there around hair is like, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
I remember growing up, I had long, thick hair. So imagine Diana Ross, like, when it was like full and like not super curly, it was just like full and fluffy and amazing. That's how my mom would let me be running around the house.
Okay.
And so that was long hair, and a lot of hair was beautiful. But if it was straight, you were like the epitome of beauty. So a lot of the women, Black women in the country, would always relax their hair. So we know we have this history with relaxers, but you knew from a very young age that eventually you were going to be on that, on that same path, relaxing your hair, spending hours in the salon, getting it straight because it looked beautiful. And so, like that's kind of how I envisioned it. And then I had this experience when I was little. My caretaker was so frustrated with my hair, she chopped it all off.
Oh no. Oh
Gave me a
my.
short afro. And I was traumatized because I love my hair.
Oh no.
And I was like, what did you do, lady? My hair grew back. It was fine. I survived. My mom was really upset, but she realized that I can't let her wear her hair natural. I really have to like start relaxing her hair, And so I stepped into that world, and I didn't want to look back because I did feel different and beautiful, like this is what we are taught. Straight hair is beautiful. And so that was kind of like, and that was what was pervasive in the country. It was awful, of course, to be able to experience that and have that connection. But, that's kind of how I, that was my experience. But then I realized that relaxers don't last forever, right? Like they don't withstand sweat. They don't withstand humidity. They don't withstand jumping in pools. And when you're a kid, you're doing all those things, right? So my hair looked busted 9 times, out of 10, and so it pushed me to start to be like, look, I got to figure out how to do my hair. And so I would experiment with curly and straight, and it was fine. I think all the way through college, it was like something that was a little bit more normal and accepted. It didn't really matter. I didn't really care either, like if people were reacting negatively. But when I got to corporate America, like I said, people started to respond in a really strange way, and it forced me to just kind of step back. And so when I found this curly hair community, beauties that were rocking their curly hair and loving it.
Right.
I was like, hello, I want some of this. I want what they're drinking, And so people like Miss Rizos, Carolina Contreras, Dominican, there's a lot of Dominican influencers that I follow. House of Curls, she's got amazing shirts as well, by the way. She's got one that says, oh my God, now I'm blanking. O pelo malo wear. So in Spanish, like if you have very thick, coarse hair and you can't, like not even a relaxer can help you.
Oh no.
They would say,
that's thick hair.
They would say you have pelo malo, and that means you have bad hair. And so she created a t-shirt, with like a cute little character with this woman with like beautiful curly hair. And it says pelo malo wear. And it's like everywhere. So I got my shirt, but just letting you guys know she's got great products and also great, great merch if you want to check her out. And so people like her, Bomba Curls, Lulu Cordero, she's got a whole hairline. It's in Nordstrom, but these are women that are changing the game, right? Yes. And making natural Afrocentric hair beautiful. And changing and creating a movement. And you see it. You go to DR, you go to Puerto Rico, you see more Black women, Black Latinas, Black Puerto Rican, Black Dominican women owning that beauty. But it's still a movement, and it's still a battle, that we're all kind of fighting. And this came to reality for me when the Dominican Minister of Education in Dominican Republic, her name was Marianela Pinales. She came up with this video basically celebrating natural hair. And It has like kids in like their school uniforms, with braids and curls and just, all these different textured, hair, and they're all happy and smiling. And she put this attention on it. And it was well received. I'll share the link to your community so you have a beautiful video. It was just like, I'm doing this at the right time. Like, this is the movement, it's happening. Yeah. And then shortly after she released the video, she was fired from her position. Oh. This is a woman that has been at the forefront of destigmatizing, anti-Blackness in that community, in that region. And really making sure that we found beauty in being Black. I mean, we're talking about a country that's 90% of African descent, 90%. Okay. And so while like I said, when you visit, you see the culture and the movement of all these ladies that I mentioned earlier making an impact. The truth is that the battle continues. Yes. And, I think there's, that we are raising it. We have to keep the pace in terms of raising that awareness, and raising our voices, as you say, on bringing, education around, it's okay. It's okay to show up to work with your hair in braids or what have you. It's
however
okay
you show up.
Question it.
Yeah. However you show up, what's authentically you. Whatever, like you said, you feel your freest, you're most confident when your hair is curly. So whatever works for you is how we're showing up, right? Yes. So you mentioned about, so what would you say was like maybe one defining moment that you made the decision to straighten your hair in the workplace? Like, was it one thing that happened? You talked about the negativity around it, but was it one experience? Was it several experiences? I mean, what did it for you to where you're like, yep, let's break out that straightening comb, or let's get that what they creamy crack? So
listen, I got very skilled at blowing out my hair. Let me tell you, I was like the Dominican blowout. I own it. If you ever need one, I'm like certified, like not officially, but I got really good at blowing out my hair, let's just put it that way, and I would make it last a really long time. But that's a separate topic. I would say, so there were several things that happened. It was like a certain looks, certain stares, certain comments. But this one thing that happened, I had my hair curly. I was working. We were in cubicles at the time, and it was a normal day. I had friends in the office, we were chit-chatting, I was kind of doing my thing. And then I get home and I started to kind of like, I maybe had like a clip in my hair or something. I started to undo it. And as I did it, I started to pull out paper clips and
What?
office supplies
Oh,
from my hair. Pencils, you name it. I mean, it wasn't like, it was like probably a couple paper clips. It's still like,
oh, wow.
And I remember that there was something happening around, like some giggling and, like, when something's weird and you're like, what's going on? What's everybody laughing at? And you're just kind of like, oh, it's not me. It was me.
Wow.
And that was, I think, the moment that I said, oh, shoot, I work in a really conservative environment, really, really conservative. And not only did I change my hair, I swore that I would never come into work casual, ever. I would always come in suits every single day because I wanted to make sure that I was like, not blending in, but
not seen, maybe. Not noticed.
I don't even know if it's not seen. I didn't want it to be about my hair. Like I wanted it to be about my work and my skill set and what I was bringing to the table. And I felt like if I took away that part, that distraction, both for myself and for others, that we could get to the nitty gritty and people could start seeing that I was, busting my ass, getting some really amazing things done. And I would say the testament to that is, I guess there's some truth to that. I have excelled in the organization in a really amazing and dynamic way. I don't think it's because of my hair.
Right.
It's because I took something away that with, again, the only way I could define it is that was a distraction, and it was a distraction for other people. It became a distraction for me because then I was stressing about it. Like that leads to poor mental health. Like that leads to so much, so right. I just said, let me remove that and let me just play the part, right? Let me play the conservative, corporate, mold that they want me to be in, but I will still stand out. Like I still spoke about the fact that I was a Latina. I still spoke about, where I came from. I let people know that, I wasn't just your normal, corporate head, but I didn't allow that to be the first encounter or the first, I didn't allow them to get to that bias. Yeah. They usually were confused because they didn't know. I had straight hair, my skin tone, my name, everything was like, we don't know what you are, Yeah. So, and then it gave me an opportunity to be like, okay, no, I know what the hell I'm talking about. Plus, oh, by the way, I'm Latina and my family's from here and there. And then all of a sudden, like I was breaking down some walls, some barriers. So that's what did it for me. Yeah. Sadly, that's the story. I hate telling it because I'm embarrassed that it happened to me.
I mean, that's horrible. And I hate that happened to you. And then it explains the reason or the need for the Crown Act, right? Because so I've had a couple instances that happened to me within the last 2 or 3 years. But as you were talking earlier, I reflected back to another experience years ago where I was starting a new job and they hired me. I was going to be a hostess in a restaurant. Mm-hmm. I had braids and they asked me to told me I had to take my braids out. And I wasn't thinking, right? I mean, I just got them done. I paid money to have this done. And I wasn't thinking, right? I didn't think of it as being discriminatory. I really wasn't thinking. I'm just, I had this new job. Let me take these braids out. But again.
Same thing.
and it goes to show how, like we talked about the history that we weren't learning. We didn't know. Like, I didn't know. I didn't have a reference. But now, like what you're doing on Ondas Latinas, you're bringing that awareness. The conversation we're having now is bringing that awareness for people who like, oh, I didn't know that was a form of discrimination, or that shouldn't have happened, or, oh my God, you know what I'm saying? And so now there's a village, there's a community of people that you can tap into to be able to like have that support. I asked a question like, how are you using your voice? You're using it, one, how you're showing up, right? You're showing up with that hair. Big hair, I don't care. This is me, and on your podcast, the conversations that you're having, as well as telling them like, okay, I am Latina. I am Afro-Latina, right? We're doing those things now. So again, I
I
hate that you
agree.
had that experience, but
No,
it,
I
you know,
agree.
answers why we had to have that act.
Yeah, no, and I, like I said earlier, I think it's why the, back to the voice piece, why platforms like yours, and the Ondas podcast and the many others and the influencers that are out there are so important,
Mhm.
because it becomes quite unifying. And I think there's, I always say this is one of my little token phrases that I like to go to, which is there's strength in numbers.
Yes.
And I continue to highlight, as you said, no pun intended, highlights. I need some, by the way. And I continue to highlight how my curly hair has changed me, though. Like it really has kind of created this like another layer of energy in me that
Mhm.
I was avoiding for 16 years. And how I feel about it, there's still people that are like, I don't know, I can't do
Yeah.
that, but I've been amazed that every time the topic comes up, by the way, people usually, whether it's on the podcast, like when I have my podcast and I bring up the question on the podcast, it strikes up, like
Yeah.
it just conjures up so much emotion and people get excited. Like they want to just talk about hair. And at work, especially, I'm on a lot of panels and on this topic, when it comes up, a lot of my Black colleagues, or any colleague that has, curly or Afrocentric hair, they go, thank you so much. Like, thank you for talking about this, because it is a struggle that I have
Mhm.
had, and it's not like something that they struggled years ago, like
It's
today.
recent. Yeah.
They're going to work and worrying about this. That's
Mhm.
awful, to live like that and to feel like that and to have people make you uncomfortable about something that's actually so special and beautiful and really
Yeah.
so entrenched in our culture. I just read about how, I didn't know this, that braids during slavery,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
sure you saw that post, that it was used to communicate about
Mhm.
how you were, escaping.
Yeah.
And getting through the Underground Railroad and all of that. Like, I think that's beautiful, like not
Yes.
a beautiful experience that to have lived through that, but we should all know that and we should
Yeah.
all own that. And I think that's what makes hair and our experiences with it so special. So,
Absolutely. No,
I think
absolutely. Our creative genius, right? How we were able to communicate right up under folks' noses, right? It's just a testament to all of that. So you mentioned how, when you're having those conversations on a podcast and what it stirs up with some women and how some women are like, they're rooting for you, but they're not quite there. I want to kind of talk about women who don't recognize the power of their voices.
mm,
And your voice, to me, when I talk about your voice, it's an expression. So however you choose to express yourself, whether it's vocally, whether it's written, dance, etc., there are plenty of women, again, that you're experiencing that don't recognize the power of their voices. So what are you saying to those women? What are you saying to the women when you make the decision, like, I'm rocking my hair like this, and it is what it is? What did you say? What do you say to people who are like, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing that? Or, any type of apprehension? What are you telling them, or what have you told them?
yeah, so listen, I have nieces and cousins and a lot of female relatives that are a shade version of me in some way, shape, or form, darker, lighter, thick curls, waves, whatever. And so they're women who are representative of this Afro-Latino culture. I have sons that when they walk outside, people look at them, they assume they're Black. And so I want them to, it's not just I definitely think it's about the Afro-Latina voice, but I want them to also elevate, the Afro-Latina voice and know that I'm also an advocate and representing in that way. So I do it for them. I
Mm-hmm.
do it for, those are the things that drive me, I guess, in terms of how I communicate to other Afro-Latinas or to other women of color who are struggling with that, because the struggle is real and it's hard. And so I think about my sons. I think about the rising professionals in my organization who look to me for mentorship and coaching because I'm Afro-Latina and thereby, or I'm Black in their minds, Black, Latina, Afro-Latina, Black, however you want to define me.
Right.
I'm checking that box for them. I look like them. And I'm usually the only person that looks like them in my position in the company, even if it's an external organization. They're like, wow, she's there, like
Right.
talk to us,
Right.
So I think about them, and paying it for opening the door, but showing them, hey, it's okay. Like it's not easy.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you how to navigate, but it's okay to show up, how you want to show up. And so I think about them. I have an immense appreciation, as you can hear, for being Latina, our culture, our food, our people, our music. I'm bilingual, which my mother would kill me if I ever stopped speaking Spanish.
Right.
And I made it a point to keep that skill going because I saw it as a strength and an asset that if I lost, shame on me and shame on, that's one thing that I tell, that I communicate, try to own that skill set if you have access to it. And all of these points push me really to be as intentional as I am and show up the way that I show up. So that's what I kind of put forward to others who may be struggling with that. I support the community as well. And when we talk about things like Hispanic Heritage or Black History Month, I'm there, and I'm a part of the planning group. I'm maybe leading in some cases, I may be just doing in others, but I'm there and I'm talking about it. I'm on the PTAs in my community, so I'm purposefully decided to be on the communication board of my PTAs, and so that I could use it as a way to talk about the topic and push the D&I agenda, and so I just which is an opportunity to continue to build a network that is beyond me so that others can see it's not just me. I'm not just the only one. Like you see this beauty in so many ways, when you start to go beyond, your own, close circle. And so that's what I kind of, put forward to other Afro-Latinas to own their, to definitely own their voice, as you say, to be more confident about it, and to join, to hop on board, get on the bus, and join the movement, because that's the only way we'll break down the barriers that exist. And the barriers, by the way, exist in our own Latino community. Sometimes it exists in our Black communities, but we have to be the ones that own the responsibility to unify and to contribute, and making sure that our culture, that we understand what our culture brings to the table, and that we're not here to pick sides. I'm not here to pick sides, and sometimes I get forced. And sometimes I get forced to do that, by the way, within my own Latino community. Sometimes I have had experiences where specifically, and especially now with the conversation around race, where some people question whether I truly understand the Black experience. I mean, it's awful to be put on the spot that way. And sometimes I go, maybe I shouldn't be so bold about it. Maybe I should step back and just kind of, talk when I need to. But, I've been questioned, whether I can truly serve as an advocate. And in my mind, that thought of like, maybe I'll hold back, it's fleeting, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind, I'm here. Whether I, the question of whether I understand the experience, I think I live it, when I go outside and people look at me, I know that most people assume that I'm Black. Like there's just no way around it. My mom is very dark skinned. know that people, she has an accent and people, a very thick accent. So I don't know, sometimes they're like, I don't know what people assume. They think she's from Jamaica. They think she's from all these different places, and so like breaking down those barriers, is important to me. But I also, like I said earlier, I'm a student of life. I need to educate myself. I will, so that I can become a better, stronger advocate for our community, and really represent in a way that I can leverage my experiences as best practices for others. But the whole point for me is about unification. And I think you had mentioned earlier about, here in the States, you're forced to pick a side. And I agree. In DR, there used to be a point in time, believe it or not, where your passport had an indicator that was tied to your complexion. And so they had things like, I learned this a few years ago. I didn't even realize. My mom was like, yep, I had one of those passports. And I was like, that is crazy. You were moreno, depending on your color of your skin. You were indio, trigueño, meant you were Afro. So you had African ancestry and also indigenous ancestry. You trigueño, so you have all these different, negro was one too, black. You had all these different.
So you still have the boxes, but they put you in the box.
They put you in a box.
Right. They put you in that box as opposed to allowing you to choose which box you would be in, which in the US, they kind of give you that.
They do. They give you an option to choose.
Wow.
They give you an option to choose. There's just not a lot of options there. But, I would say sometimes it's even used as a term of endearment. I know a lot of relatives who, they're called morena or india or, this, negra, as a term of endearment. And while it seems cute on the surface, it continues to feed into these challenges that we have. So, again, it's creating like a this
division.
Divisiveness. And that's what I say, our Afro-Latino community has a opportunity to own the conversation and to talk about those experiences and to educate themselves and others on being advocates, because that's the only way we're going to bring, and being advocates, not just for Afro-Latinos or Latinos. To me, like the whole, Black Lives Matter, like I have had some really challenging discussions with relatives around that and why you should or shouldn't support that. And in my mind, again, we can't break down systemic racism if we're not owning the fact that we need to be a part of that conversation, and creating that advocacy and that support. And so that to me is, my message to other Afro-Latinos, other Afro-Latinas. And I want to always pay it forward. I want to always think about unification, but you can't do it alone, Danina. I can't do it alone. Like we have to come together as a community to build that force, and that's the driver for me. I'm sure it is for you too. Like it's about just the beauty, and finding the beauty to help us kind of get to that greater good and not, continue to feed into the divisiveness.
So for me, absolutely. But it started because I saw that there was women that were missing, right? There were women missing from the table. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, where are the women of color? And so, as I've shared before, it started as a panel. So associated with, was in diversity and inclusion as well. And I had created a panel for LGBTQ plus women of color and allies, because they were missing in that space. Like you always see white men always in that community, but I'm like, where are the women of color? So it started there. And then 3 years later, I'm like, okay, time to level up. And so then it became a podcast for women of color to, again, elevate our voices, provide us a platform to use our voices, to raise the awareness, to have those conversations that people were not having, to educate one another, right? Because like what you're saying, like I didn't know anything about that with, passports. It doesn't surprise me, right? Especially from having the various conversations, because a previous guest who is from Brazil, and she talked a lot about the proximity to the colonizer,
Yep.
proximity to whiteness. And so that
Yes.
opens you, right? So that's like, that makes sense in so many different spaces, right? But it's having the conversations, educating yourself to become aware, to say, hey, wait a minute, this is why these things are happening. This is why we are where we are. Even in a Black community, the brown paper bag test back in the day, if you were darker, lighter, and whatnot, like all of those different things and where they came from. And so when we, people who are othered and different, and when we realize that, okay, they put us in boxes, now it's up to us what we do with that. It's up to us to say, you know what, I'm proud of my complexion, my hair, my this, the beauty, what we contributed, etc. I'm good with all of that. I'm happy to be that. And so let's come together and let people know that, hey, we're here, we exist, but it's about us coming together. Because again, when you go back in history and you learn, all of it was intentional to separate us.
Yes.
To keep us separated so that we would not come together.
That's right.
So, but again, that comes from that education. Those are things that you weren't taught, right? And, and so you have to learn that. And it's not even about taking over or rising against, it's about standing up to say, hey, I'm here, and stop putting me in those boxes. Or why do we have a crown act? Like, why is there a need for that? Why is a need for this and a need for that? Because that's absolutely crazy. And
it's crazy.
Again, I'm like, I get it. I didn't know, right? I didn't know I was being discriminated against those years ago. But it brings
back. No, I think, and I think when I'm a proponent of celebrating small wins. And, I had an opportunity, I don't know if you heard this on the panel that I was speaking on, but, I tell the story a lot because I talk about my kids a lot, but, I have my 16-year-old when he was much younger. Actually, we had moved into a new town, a new neighborhood from Brooklyn. It's the town that I live in today, and South Orange. And he had started going to a new school. And so because he entered the school in like a mid-year, all the circles and friends had already kind of, gathered and formed. He didn't start from like the beginning of the elementary school experience. And so he felt a little bit like he was on like a little bit on the outskirts, and he just couldn't figure out like, where do I fit in? Is it with, the kids that are all Black, is it the, because there's not a huge Latino community here. And so he just didn't know kind of like where to fit in. And so he was struggling with that. And every day he was like, I don't know, I don't have a lot of friends, blah, blah, blah. And I ignored it because I had too much work to do. I'm kidding. I was definitely nervous and worried about him, but he gets through it was a whole middle school year experience, 3 years. He gets through the whole thing. And then he gets to like day before graduation, comes into my office and he says, Mama, I figured it out. And he said, what, he's like, I'm not just friends with one, I'm friends with everybody. That was the problem, is that I thought I needed to pick a side, but I'm friends with everybody.
Yeah.
And so I was like, that's interesting. I'm like, I'm teaching you well, because yes, that's kind of how I come at it, like I respect everybody, I don't care if you're the CEO or you're coming into, clean my office at the end of the night, I'm treating everybody with the same level of respect. And people say that to me. They're like, you always like, you're always kind of looking out for everybody. And so I think some of that, that's what I want. I see that as a win. Yes. But here's the kicker. We're at graduation. I'm thinking I'm going to make a fool of myself as soon as my husband and I are there, like jam-packed auditorium. And I'm like ready to like scream out his name when they say it. And I'm going to like embarrass him, embarrass us. And, they say his name, when I tell you the entire auditorium, kids, his classmates, his teachers, parents, all in unison, Gabriel. And my husband, like, you couldn't even hear me. I was like, Gabriel. I was like looking around like, what is happening right now? Literally everybody. And so we're leaving, my husband and I were leaving the gym and everybody's like, what happened? Why did Gabriel get that? Some of our friends, like, why did we get? And I said, I don't know. And I think it was tied to the comment that he made to me the night before. He was like, I'm friends with everybody. Like, mind blown, like,
Right.
so I think
Absolutely.
I see that as a win, as I
Mhm.
said earlier, like I want my kids to be able to carry the torch
Yeah.
of being very proud of who they are, where they come from, but using that for good, using
Absolutely.
that to unify, using that to bring people together, using that to tell people you don't have to bring a side, you just show up,
Yeah.
and we're good, we're friends, and so that's huge, and
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people, even, older generation, right, that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. I even say people at work don't have that level of maturity and appreciation, for humanity, because it really is a sort of a humanity issue, it's
Yeah.
not just about it's directly correlated to racial inequities, absolutely, but it's a humanity issue. Like, we are humans, we should
Yeah.
not have to be worrying about the stuff that you're forcing us to worry about
Mhm.
every day. So anyway, I see that as a win, and hopefully more of that is happening, throughout the world, where people, our future generations, are carrying the mantle, forward.
Yeah, so being prideful of who you are, right? And recognizing that with some people, who you are multiple layers.
Yeah.
And that's fine, embracing all of that. And then
Yep.
standing up for people when you need to stand up for people.
That's
I
right.
think that's a beautiful way to look at things. So I
Yeah.
want to shift a little
I love it.
bit. I want to shift a little bit. So my sister, author, poet, Soul True, wrote a book, Dreams Deferred. And so when I reflected on the book, I was thinking about what dream have I deferred? And I wanted to encourage women to think about the same thing and then what they've done about it. Right.
Mhm.
So maybe,
Mhm.
you delayed something, and, thinking about it today. What is that thing
Mm.
that you may have delayed, and what have you done about it? Or what do you need to do about it?
Sure, I want to know more about your sister. You've piqued my interest, but I love the question. Um, when you sent me the question, my son was in the room when I was reading them, and I was like, "Oh my God, check this one out!" And my son was like, he like already knew what I was gonna talk about
Okay.
because
And
there is
is
a
this
story
Gabriel?
behind it.
Is this
This was,
Gabriel we're talking
well,
about?
actually, no, this is my younger one. His
Okay.
name's Rylan. Gabriel's in sleepaway camp right now, but he was like, but they know that both of them know the story, and they would have reacted similarly, because I do talk about this one thing all the time, because I want to educate them on the story and how they should deal with it, so I thought it was an awesome question. I was like, wow, you just like got to the heart of it. um but at the heart, I'm an artist. I'm a creative. That's what drives me in everything
Yeah.
I do. I also loved math. I was like,
Math.
my mom was really strong at math, and I always heard like women weren't really strong in math, so I was like, my mom is, and so I'm going to be too. And so I've always kind of pushed on like art and math were kind of like my big drivers. And I was always really strong academically, but I had this passion for art that would not go away. I couldn't like calm it down. And it was especially with drawing. And so growing up, I was like, how do I marry art and math? Like, how do I bring those two together? I was like, architecture. So I said to myself, I want to be an architect. I mean, since I was little, since I was in DR, I was like, I'm going to be an architect. Like, I'm going to be an architect. And so then eventually I kind of got into, I got just the bug or whatever for fashion. So I was like, well, maybe fashion design. So it could be one of those two, architecture or fashion design. So those are my two things. You would ask me growing up, what do I want to be? Those are the two things I would say. So scene cuts to high school. And we're being asked, as we're approaching our senior year, to pick a career that we would want to work in as an intern, just to get our feel for it, and really know whether that's really what we want to study when we get to, select the college that we're going to. And so I was like, yes. And my director, our school director, was supposed to help us, first like hear us out and hear our business case, and like kind of place us, because she had really good connections. And so it's like, it's gonna be easy, like no brainer. She could probably come up with 5 architecture agencies to like plug me into.
Right.
So I'm saying, I'm like, this is no brainer. So I'm so excited. I tell her my story, what I want to do, why, and all that. And she immediately shuts it down.
Oh, wow.
And she says, you're not gonna make any money in architecture. You know, first is because I was Latina, I was a woman. And two, you know, she didn't say this, but I kind of got it, you know, because I was Black.
Yeah.
And so I was like, really? She's like, no, there's no money in architecture. You're not gonna, no, it's not smart. It's not smart for you to do that. But because I trusted her,
Right.
you
Right.
know, a white woman, and because I trusted her, I was like, okay, well, what about fashion design? So I just kind of defaulted on that. I was like, okay, I have a backup, you know, and I would love to open up a kids' clothing store, you know, maybe something like, you know, in that realm. And she was like, cool. She places me, she has a friend who owns a small boutique children's store up in Upper East Side in New York City. Mind you, I mean, I'm growing up in New Jersey. Population is mostly like Black, Latino, you know, like middle class. Here I am in the Upper East Side of Manhattan, right? Like clientele is totally different.
Right.
In some little small store. I mean, I just was like, really? Okay, let's do this. And so I was a little bummed. I was disappointed. And I, you know, trusted this woman. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna put any hopes in architecture and fashion design to the side. I really not even like literally, I just never thought about it again. That's not where I want to be. And you know, I would say all not lost. I did the job. I ended up, you know, having to commute, you know, by myself from the Bronx. It was family where I was staying at while I was doing this experience, you know, so I got to commute, you know, by myself in New York City, you know, during a time that it wasn't dangerous, but you know,
Yeah.
I was 16. I didn't live in the city. Like it was foreign to me. I visited a lot, but it wasn't like I knew it like the back of my hand. And so I did that, and you know, I got massive customer service experience. I, you know, helped with, I understood the product really, you know, I got to learn the product really well. So when people came in, usually was like frantically like, you know, I need to find, you know, blah, blah, blah. You know, I'd be like, here you go. And it would be accepted. Like, it wasn't like, no, I don't think so. I'm just going to get this. It was like, done.
Okay.
Let's pay for it. So like that to me built like this layer of confidence that I never had before, you know, that I think was there, but it kind of just brought it up a little.
Yeah.
And then I was dealing with a clientele that I never dealt with before. And so like all of that, you know, I saw how the operations was being run. They had this like amazing way of wrapping gifts that I still do today. So I was like, okay, I'm not, you know, I'm getting something. So, you know, I took away the silver lining. I was like, this isn't awful. You know, I got, you know, independence, you know, I got resiliency, I got a boost in confidence, some customer service experience, and I got purpose.
Yeah.
And to me, purpose was huge because the purpose of all of that was to tell me that anything I could do, no matter how foreign it was to me, I was going to kick ass. Like I was going to kill it. I was going to just like hit it out the park. And I think that was the moment where I was like, oh, I see, you know, like, and it really speaks to my experience in corporate America. I've done a lot of roles where I've been given an opportunity, and it's something that's completely out of the comfort zone. I think that happens a lot to my Black colleagues, like, take this, no one else wants it, you know, and you do it, and then you know, do an amazing job, and then you move on and like 10 people replace you. And so, you know, so it was like telling of what my future would be. If I would say if that didn't happen, I probably wouldn't have chosen to go to an all liberal arts school where I didn't know what I was going to do. I was like, I'm just going to figure this out on the way. I wouldn't have met my boyfriend at the time, now husband.
Right.
You know, I wouldn't have landed in the career that I'm in right now, and that I've been successful in for the past 20 years. I've gained a lot of strengths from that career. And you know, I was still able to kind of dabble in some creative things. I did a little bit of modeling when I came to New York City. I went to FIT and brushed up on my drawing skills. I had two beautiful boys, you know, that I adore and are my life today. I acted in an independent film by the name of The Obituaries of Jasper James. Check it out. It's won a few awards, not a lot, but I've done some acting. You know, I've networked with a lot of amazing influencers, including yourself. So I feel like none of that would have happened the way that it's happened. I am like a huge proponent of self-care. We haven't talked about that on this, but I do think that self-care is something that our community, especially the community of color, does not own in an intentional way. I think it's growing. It's like another like curly hair. Starting. I think it's getting better, but you know, I've run 3 half marathons in the past 3 years. I take yoga, just started. Okay. Taking tennis, you know, so like, I'm just like, and now I have my Ondas Podcast.
Yes.
My most proudest moment, because it allows me to do, you know, what we've been talking about is elevating, educating, really talking about stuff that not everybody hears all the time, and making it common, making it like digestible and special, you know. And so I've gotten a chance to do that. None of that would have happened, you know, if I had chosen something different. So I would say, in comparison to what other people are doing, probably these are like small little tiny achievements. For me, they're massive achievements. I feel very proud to have had the experiences I have had. Certainly, it has come with struggles along the way. Do I have moments where I'm like, I wonder if I had done that architecture thing, you know, where would I be today?
Yeah.
You know, I definitely have those like moments, you know, where I wish I had, but I don't know that if we were to do this all over again, that it would have turned out that way. And I would say the moral of the story is that you have the power to control the narrative. Yes. And if I had the power to control the narrative in that point, if this woman said to me, no architecture, I knew that I could have said to her, you're wrong, and I'm going to do it. And I would have done it, and it would have been great. But the moral is that if you set your mind to something, you're going to be great at it. And if your heart tells you to go for something, listen to it and follow it. That to me is the moral of the story. Follow your dream. But even if your dream doesn't come out and doesn't pan out, whether you tried it and it don't succeed in it, or whether you decide I'm not going to go down that path because someone convinces you not to, that you have the power to control what success looks like, regardless of what you choose. And what happens next. I think that's the moral. You know, I still tell my kids, follow your dreams, you know. If you want to be the best tennis player ever, you know, do it. You know, I'm here to make sure I'm opening the doors and making that possible for you. And if you don't become the professional tennis player that you thought you were going to be, there's an avenue for that too, you know. And so I think that to me is I don't know, how do you feel about it? I'm curious about how your sister, you know, confronted
so like what you're saying, what I was hearing is to recognize the path, right? So recognize that decision or that saying yes to that thing, where it got you. Like all the great things that have happened, like you listed them along the way, like, well, if I hadn't, then this would not have happened, and so on and so forth. And I think that we don't always recognize that. We don't take the time to recognize that, oh, when I turned down that corner, when I turned right, when I wanted to go straight or left, that all these great things happen. Like I saw, oh my God, look at that beautiful thing over there that I saw, you know, or, oh, and I stopped and then I did this thing. Like we don't necessarily focus on all of that. Right. And then you even said that you still were able to dabble into it, right? Okay, it was architecture. So that's like what, designing buildings or, you know, homes and or parks and whatnot. But still you called out that it was creative, but you've done some creative things. Right. So they don't always look exactly the way that we thought they would initially. but it's to appreciate how they did turn out in the life that we were able to live as a result of, and just to recognize that and to know, I mean, it's still not too late. If you wanted to become an architect, you still could, right?
I don't know, but you know.
I mean, you could if you wanted to be, right?
No, yeah, no, you're right.
Right?
You're right. Yeah. I don't think I ever would have been like, I don't think I would have ever envisioned myself taking tennis. And even the first tennis class is not architecture, I know, but like even the first tennis class, it's such a technical sport. I mean, and it's a thinking sport. Like, it's not like, let me just hit this baseball and run to that base. Like, you got to be like, your beats have to like be in sync with this ball that's coming back and forth at you at different speeds of like your position, how you hold the racket, like all these things you got to be thinking about. And I thought day one, I was like, no way.
Yeah.
And I stuck with it. I'm only like, I don't know, 5 classes in, and I've gotten better. And the reason I took it is because my kids take tennis, and my youngest is avid player and just loves the sport. And I would play with him, and he would get so mad at me. He would just be like, he was like, he was like, I can't. Like, and he would try to like teach me, and I was like, I had this block. I couldn't listen. And so he was like, I'm done. I can't play with you. And I was just disgusted by the whole thing. So I took tennis, and he saw me play with a friend, you know, a few lessons in, and he was like, you're getting better, mama. He's like, you're improving, you know? And so like, that's huge. Like, I mean, again, these are like small wins, but that to me, you know, speaks to one, just being open, you know, and to your point, like if I said right now, I'm going to go back to architecture, I could, you know, it's like, I have to build a plan to do it, but, you know, I could absolutely, you know, go, you know, go do it because my history has told me that I can. And I believe anybody, you know, if you put your heart to it, you got to be intentional about it. You know, you're not going to wake up next day and be like, oh, I'm a pro at whatever it is that you think you're going to do, but you got to be intentional about it. And so I think that's possible. And I think it's about talking to all those, you know, individuals that we touch every single day, particularly the future generation, to let them know that, you know, because sometimes the people that, you know, are educators and they're, you know, molding them like this woman did, may not guide you the right way, you know. So opening their minds to come talk to, you know, the people that are looking out for you and advocating for you and coaching, you know, so that you can stay, you know, on the right path. But
and then here's the other thing with that too is like, you know, you said, oh no, because you no longer want to do it, and that's okay. So it's just to also recognize that sometimes at one point you thought you wanted to do something, at that time you wanted to do it, and then later, like, oh no, I don't, right? You know, and it may have taken the woman to say what she said to you for you to go down a different path, because maybe that was the path you were supposed to go down, right? I'm going to venture to kind of say yes, because everything that has happened as a result. But the point is, if you want something, put in the work to have it. If you decide I no longer want it, that's okay as well. We can change. We can change our minds. We can move on. It's not a failure. It's that you made a decision that, okay, I no longer want that thing. I want to do something else, and that's fine. I want to just ask a couple of quick questions before I go into the bonus question. One, did any of your family ever come to the States, right? Did they ever, you know, you came over at 9 by yourself. Did your mom or anyone else ever come?
That's a great question. I had family in the States. There were like 8th, 9th cousins. So there were definitely relatives here, and they knew. So I was born in Puerto Rico, and because I was born in Puerto Rico, I was able to travel because I was a citizen of the US. And so they were begging my mom to send me, because they were like, you know, we're here, we're set up, you know, we got good schools, like just, you know, send her. And my mom asked me, and, you know, it was a choice, you know, she was like, you want to do this, you know, I'm not coming, you know, and I was like, yeah. I remember the day, like it was yesterday. I was like, heck yeah. If I could speak English, it would sound like heck yeah. But, you know, I was like, no doubt, you know, I'm getting on that plane, you know.
And now, are your sons bilingual?
My oldest is bilingual. They're not super comfortable. My youngest has battled us forever, is starting to like appreciate it now. I think now that I'm like a little bit more vocal and he's like hearing me more like
Yes.
in the space. My mother was their nanny for a long time, and she would only speak to them and communicate with them in Spanish. That was the agreement we had, and she would teach them Spanish. But you know, I sadly say that, you know, I didn't have time capacity to like pour into battling against schools and all that. And I did have an experience where, and I didn't answer your question, but my mom did end up coming over. She did. She ended up
that when she was a nanny.
She ended up coming over a year later. She was like, I'm not leaving this girl. She was a single parent too. So she was one of 13, and she's the only one of her siblings to go to college, graduate, travel outside the country. You know, she taught, you know, at a college in Dominican Republic. You know, so she was like driven, you know, so that was my model, you know, and I definitely, and she also modeled too. That's where I got the whole fashion bug. But she eventually came a year later. And so for a year, I was without my mommy. And yeah, and I would say that she, you know, stayed close to me. As soon as I was pregnant with my first, she was like, I'm coming, I'm your, you know, I'm your nanny, I'm gonna help you, and didn't leave my side. I would say until we moved out to the suburbs, because it just was harder for her to like, you know, commute and come to us, and the kids were older. So she's just now, she gets to be abuela, you know, and I think that to me is more important than being a caretaker. And the kids adore her. She lives like 5 minutes away from us, and they only talk about her. Like my last review of kids, their parent teacher conference, the teachers were like, Rylan cannot stop talking about Abuela. We need to meet this woman because she sounds like she's amazing. But you know, just this like visceral, just connectivity. And she tells really great stories about growing up and stuff. And so they are definitely absorbing, you know, language, culture, you know, everything, you know, if not from me through everything that I'm doing, but especially from my mom. I'm like at the point where I'm going to end up paying for them to take Spanish classes so that they can own it. Because I really do believe I see it as an asset.
It definitely is. No,
oh my
it definitely is. I said, you know, with people with accents, I remember a woman, I think she's a Colombian, and she does have a heavy accent. And, you know, she said that, you know, someone said something about her accent. And then her comeback was like, but do you speak 2 languages? I was like, boom, right? Boom. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. So own it.
Yes.
So our bonus question, so the focus on July is on wealth. How do you define wealth, and what is the relevance of wealth building?
Another great question, Janine. So, you know, we were you mentioned about the last question and how this woman said, you know, don't do architecture. And like, you know, yes, I made the decision not to ever think about it again, but it ties to wealth in that, you know, I do come from really humble beginnings. And, you know, like I said, my mom was a go-getter. She worked very hard to make sure that we had things, you know, that I had access to things, even in DR. You know, we were living in a better, you know, we had a better living arrangement than most of my relatives did. But we always were there to support our family and our community. And so that's that, you know, but when we came here to the States, you know, here's the kicker is that, my mom, as smart as she was and as driven as she was, you know, you I'm sure have heard the story before. Many people come into the States and they're very well educated, and then what do they end up doing? They're working in like cleaning houses and, you know, things that no one else wants to do, in service arena, you know, work that no one else wants to do. And so she came here, and she still had success, but she worked in she had like 5 jobs. I mean, I didn't see my mom, you know, on a regular, you know, when I was going to school. I would see her in the morning, and then I would see her at midnight when she was picking me up from my relative's house. to bring me home. That was my experience. And that experience is tied to wealth, right? Like we just didn't have the means to be able to live, in a quality kind of way, which, state has always been and will always be with me. So that notion of wealth, hits a lot different for me, in many ways. And I would say wealth is has like my curly hair journey. I feel like I have had a journey with wealth, the woman that said to me, don't do architecture. She said to me, one of the reasons I came to this country is because I want opportunity, and I didn't want to ever have to struggle. And I didn't want to see see the struggle or have the same experiences that my mom had, raising me and having to survive in this environment. And so when she said, you're not going to make money, I was like, well, then that's not the job for me.
Right. Yeah.
I don't care how much I love it, and so yeah, money was a driver, sadly, but that was huge for me. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to find my skill set, apply it in other ways. I could do that. And so I think it's gone through this journey of like, I just need to be able to support my mom and just have basic needs. I just need to, like, this is how I saw the value of wealth along my journey. I just need to be able to work. I started working when I was 13. So that I could help her, and so I was like, I just need to be able to work and go to school, and I just need to be able to find a school that I can afford, and then I need to just be able to find a job as soon as I get out of school so that I can support myself. My mom doesn't have to support me, and then I had to like make sure that if I'm living on my own, that I can take care of myself, but also think about my future. So I need a job that's stable. Oh, and my boyfriend, now husband, when we're together, we got married and we lived in Brooklyn and the Fort Greene area. And, it was around the time when that community was starting to become really gentrified. And my in-laws who grew up in that community were like, y'all need to own something, And so like, these are things that are like our, white, the white community, they're given this rule map, and an area is set up to succeed in that way. No one says, hey, you should own property, or hey, you should like no one gives you that roadmap. I think it's getting better, right? I think we're doing better as we continue to succeed in our careers. We continue to pay it forward for our kids and future generations. But when he said that to us, to me, it was like, okay, let's do this. So we got married. And it was a small wedding. I didn't have a big 200 people wedding. It was 30 people in Brooklyn. And that literally got married that weekend that followed, or the week that followed, we were signing contracts for a co-op in Brooklyn. And that, like, these are the things that how I define wealth, and why it's important is because we start to associate wealth with material things. But for me, wealth has a higher level meaning. Yes, there's comfort, and there are things that just become more, put you at ease and more at peace, when you have financial stability. And I'm very grateful and thankful that I've been able to have those opportunities, or have the foresight to go, yeah, we're going to own, and yeah, we're going to sell now so we can own this next thing. Oh, we're going to sell here. Exactly. We're going to go to these schools, and like, just being like always thinking about creating stability for us as a family, but then thinking about future and how we create stability for our kids. Like, God forbid something happens to us, how do we make sure they're going to be okay when we retire? How, like, always think. I also worked in risk management arena, so I guess it's in your face a lot. But I don't, these are not tools that are given to us. And I think the way that, the public, or our communities of color, unfortunately are presented with the racial inequities that exist out there. I'm not going to lie, I'm sure when we're looking for homes, we were probably dealing with some stuff,
that you didn't know.
And we didn't know, right?
Didn't
but
know.
In our minds, we're like, we're just buying. Like, like, that's our goal. We're just going to buy, and there's nothing going to stop us, So just using wealth as a way to make yourself stronger, stable, so that you can find opportunities to not just enjoy the superficial, the materialistic side of things, but to find room for, and I don't know how to define it, but it's like almost defining room for the quality things, like spending more time with family. Like I never took vacations with my mom. I take vacations with and I'm not saying all the time, but we take time. We're able because
you're
we now
living
have the
life.
means.
You're living life, right? So
living life.
Wealth allows you to be able to live life without always struggling, without only seeing your children in the morning and then at midnight, right? And so, like, one of the main things for me is my son is in college. He's a rising junior, no loans, absolutely not. And what I learned is, like, people of color, Black people, often are taking out loans. So when the students graduate college, they're saddled with that debt.
That's right.
Whereas others, you know, they come out, there's no debt. Their parents end up buying them a house and or a car, whatever, they're set up for success. Whereas our children are not. So for me, I'm determined, my son, he isn't going to, there's no loans.
He's not going to have that struggle. He's not going to have that obstacle in his way. But listen, even the white kids that go and do access loans, they come out again, they're taken care of because someone was, you know, all those things that I like said I was thinking about. Someone's, you know, they have a history, right? They have like, you know, centuries of their families
trust and money set aside. And like I said, the homes, the cars, the things that set them up for success, all of that is there. But we're now starting to open our eyes to that, because when you talk about the material things, I think it's a show that's out now on one of the cable stations, but I think it was like a ring versus a home. It's something. And I remember years ago, you know, talking to a coworker, and I'm like, oh no, I want that ring, right? Because, you know, but it's like, yeah, no, absolutely no. Like, what is that ring gonna do for you versus a home?
Right.
Which is building. I'm like, what do they say? The fastest way to wealth is ownership.
That's right.
And then a second one, I believe, is, you know, unfortunately, when somebody dies and they leave the insurance money, right? If there is that, but I think
if there is insurance money,
right? Those are the two ways. But so yes, absolutely. So, you know, when you know better, like Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better. And I think we're doing that, right? And we're able to do that.
I don't know. Again, the playbook was not given to us, you know, so we're writing the playbook, you know, as we go, and we're becoming, like you said, like we're becoming more aware. Oh, wait, there's a pay gap. Right. Oh, wait, you know,
things we didn't know.
There's this education, there's, you know, a redlining, like these things that have happened in our history that have created these systemic things that are blocking us from getting wealth and I mean, like Citi wrote an amazing research report. If you didn't see it, it's called Closing the Racial Inequality Gaps. And it basically said that as a result of racial inequities, the racial inequities that exist in the US, that it has cost us 16 trillion. We have lost $16 trillion, you know, as a community in GDP.
Wow.
And that, to me, that's tied to not just a pay gap, but that's tied to access to housing, that's tied to access to education, that's tied to investments in Black-owned companies and businesses. $16 trillion. That's huge, you know, and once we start to break down those barriers, like we could be, you know, as a community, driving that much worth into the environment, and also supporting our communities to be stronger. We can't do it alone, and it has to take conversations like this, and a lot of studying up, you know, and a lot of understanding what empowers you, you know, how do you empower yourself? How do you empower your community so that these changes can start to happen, and talk about it, you know, and be vocal about it, you know, and not sit on the sidelines, because we'll continue to suffer. And I think the wealth piece, you know, there's so much connectivity to so many things that are important to us as a human.
Extremely important. And you know what? And
Right.
so what I'm also, what I'm thinking about when you're talking, I'm thinking about, and you got to do it for yourself because you
That's
can't
right.
wait for anybody else.
That's
But
right.
two things though, you can, try to push and, voting and different things and telling people, hey, using your voice, like, I need you to do X, Y, Z because you're in, you're in that seat to be able to do that. But at the same time, doing it for yourself. So it's an and, right?
Yes.
It's definitely an and. It's not like, okay, I need you to this and I'm just going to wait for you to do it, because that's not going to happen. Like, we talked about the critical race theory, like it may or may not happen, but we don't just wait on it. Go ahead and educate our children now. So
That's
I wanted, before we say goodbye, what would you like to leave our audience
I love
with?
talking to you.
I know. I'm like, girl, we got to have a part 2 or something. But so what would you like to leave our audience with?
Oh, wow. I think I've been saying this a lot, but I'm a unifier. I like to see myself as a unifier. I like to see being Afro-Latina as the superpower that leads me to become a unifier. And I want to impart that superpower to, our community of color, our Latinas, our Afro-Latinas, our Black beauties out there, to do that, to continue to unify, to come together and support each other as a community, but to elevate the things that make us beautiful, not pull us down, right? Like not create divisiveness, because there is strength in numbers. And so I want people to kind of walk away with that. And I would say the other piece is pay it forward, always pay it forward, always think about paying it forward. Yes, to your point, it's important to do things for yourself and to elevate yourself and your children and future generations, but we have to open the door so that others can also, lead the way and carry the mantle forward. So whatever way you think you can pay it forward for another, Afro-Latina, Black queen, amazing woman of color out there, please do it, because certainly we are probably one of the few only demographic that's predominantly being impacted by the social macro challenges that are out there in the world. And so the only way we can continue to fight that battle and persevere and elevate and go above it all is to help each other, along this journey. So those are the two takeaways I would want people to go with.
Absolutely. I love those. I thank you so much for the conversation. Like you said, we continue talking. Look, I have to go take my kittens to the vet.
Oh no. Hopefully I didn't keep you much. I didn't keep you too long. I didn't realize I'm like an hour. I talk a lot. I'm sorry.
But it's all good. It's all good. So for those of you who are watching or listening, today's guest is Ámaly Homer. Her bio and ways to connect with her, you'll be able to see those in the show notes. Check her out. She shared a lot of information. A lot of what we were talking about today is being proud of who you are, being proud of being Afro-Latina, if that's who you are, being proud of being a Black woman, a woman of color, just all of the things around that about being who we are and showing up as your true authentic self, whatever that looks like. So if that's curly hair, rock that. If it's straight hair for you, rock that as well, braids, etc. We are, we're a multitude of different types and shades and hair and experiences, and they're all great. And to just tap into one another, support one another, continue to lift one another, that's what we're doing. That's what an intimate conversation with women of color is all about. So I thank you all for listening on your favorite platform, podcast platform, or watching on YouTube. Do all the things, subscribe, share, all of that. And until next week. So thank you so much. And again, Ámaly, thank you so much for your voice. I love the conversation. And until next time, have a good one.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.